ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਜਸਟਿਨ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਬੀਤੇ ਦਿਨੀ ਐਥਨਿਕ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਰਾਉਂਡ ਟੇਬਲ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਵਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਗਏ। ਇਸ ਮੌਕੇ ਤੇ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਭਾਰਤ ਅਤੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਿੱਖੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਰਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਨਿੱਜਰ ਕਤਲ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਭਾਰਤ ਦੀ ਇੰਟੈਲੀਜੈਂਸ ਦੇ ਹੱਥ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛੇ ਗਏ, ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਦਿੱਤਾ।
India is, I often comment in visits to India or in engagement with Indian diplomats that Canada and India are the world's two largest democracies, us by size, them by population, and we should be able to get along. They are also a country of tremendous diversity, and that should be seen as more of a richness than it actually is, I think, in the current context in India. But the way Canadians are able to get along with our diversity adding to our country is, I think, something that other countries can learn from. Obviously, there are real challenges right now between Canada and India because one of the most important roles of any Canadian Prime Minister is to protect Canadian citizens, and to know that there are credible reasons to believe that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is a real problem. It's a problem for the rules-based order and the principles of free, open democracies and sovereignty that we stand for. It's also a problem in our relations with India because we cannot ignore that. My responsibility to make sure Canadians are protected is my most important job. But whether we talk about the people-to-people connections with India, whether we talk about the business connections with India, whether we talk about the work together on the international stage to fight climate change, to promote democracy and human rights, India is an important partner to Western democracies. So we want to get through this challenging situation, but there needs to be accountability and there needs to be an understanding that respecting the rules and the laws and the sovereignty of Canada and Canadian citizens, regardless of their politics. In Canada, people are free to believe and support the political parties they want around the world. That may be an irritation for the Indian government, but it's part and parcel of being a Canadian is you get to support whatever beliefs you have. That's part of what makes Canada a free country, and that's something we're always going to defend.
ਉੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਭਾਰਤ ਅਤੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਰਿਸ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਈ ਖਟਾਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਖੁੱਲ੍ਹ ਕੇ ਬੋਲੇ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਤੇ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਗਰਿਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਸੁਰੱਖਿਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੁੱਢਲੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀ ਬਣਦੀ ਹੈ।
Canada has always stood very strongly against terrorism, against violence, against intimidation. We have always been a country of the rule of law. We will always and have always followed up anytime any of our fellow countries around the world have expressed concerns about behaviors or about violence or about criminality. We take them seriously, we always do. What we will not do, however, is go after people because they're saying things that the Indian government doesn't like, things that the Indian government disagrees with. This is Canada. People come to this country from places all around the world, and some of them come to Canada partly because they are in disagreement with what their home country is doing or what the government of the home country is doing, or they don't feel as safe in the home country, on top of wanting to build a better life for themselves in this country. It is fundamental for Canada that we protect people coming from around the world, whether they be Iranian citizens or Russian citizens or from any other country around the world, and we will always stand up to that. I understand that members of the Indian government have concerns around being in disagreement with some of the positions that Canadian citizens take. We're a free country. We allow for that freedom of expression and freedom to protest But we continue to make sure that public safety, that laws are obeyed, that violence is not encouraged or allowed. We're going to continue to keep all communities safe because everyone should feel safe in Canada, and that's our job. Our job is not to crack down on political protest. That's something that we allow in Canada. Other countries can make their decisions, but we will continue to defend Canadians' rights to freedom of expression, all Canadians from every corner of the world.
ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ੀ ਦਖਲਅੰਦਾਜ਼ੀ ਦੇ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਖੁੱਲ੍ਹ ਕੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਤੇ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨਸ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਹੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਚੁਣਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ 2019 ਦੀਆਂ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਹੋਣ ਜਾਂ 2021 ਦੀਆਂ ਚੋਣਾਂ। ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਚੁਣੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨਸ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਹੀ ਚੁਣੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ।
The first thing to know is that over the past years, everywhere around the world, in every democracy, there have been increased attempts by foreign governments to influence or interfere with our democratic institutions. We are seeing around the world countries like China and Russia and others wanting to destabilize democracies, wanting to have people believe less in their institutions, in the freedom of their elections, because that is a way of seeing democracy weaken, which is something that certain countries around the world want very much. That is why when we got elected in 2015, we created a number of mechanisms that had never existed before. You know, the Conservative government before never brought in oversight by parliamentarians, never brought in tools to ensure the integrity of our elections. We did that in our very first term. And because we did that, the conclusion of all the experts and all of our security agencies is the elections in 2019 and 2021, the last two elections in Canada, were free and fair. There were attempts at interference by a number of countries, but those attempts at interference and those interference activities did not result in a weakening of our elections or our electoral processes. That's something that everyone needs to remember, that yes, there are countries trying to interfere, but it didn't work. The elections, the last two elections, were decided by Canadians, both at the national level and at the individual riding level. But we need to continue to be vigilant because more and more countries are looking to interfere in democracies around the world, particularly where they have citizens. And we are going to continue to do that work. That's why right now there is a foreign interference inquiry going on to make recommendations to see what was done, see what needs to continue to do. But the bottom line is this: the election integrity held. The elections were decided by Canadians, and the next election will have more systems and more protections to make sure that despite activities around foreign interference, the election will be decided by Canadians once again.